One more time, creator and cast of Puffs right here. Let's do it. Come on. Unbelievable. Welcome, congratulations.
Thank you.
You know, you have a show. That's an impossible thing to achieve right off the bat, right? But this particular show, I gotta say, you achieved something which is even more difficult, which is it could have easily just been one long inside joke, this show, but you've got a show with heart, with a story, with fully realized, fleshed out characters that I was shockingly connected to by the end of it.
I am very glad to hear that.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Great
Thank
job.
you so much.
We've got some time. I want to get into how you did it. Let's start with the obvious question in the very beginning. Why this idea, this concept, this idea? When did the lightning strike, so to speak? Pardon the...
No, great. A bunch of people with the creative team that I'm a part of as well, which is our director, Chris McCarthy-Parker, and Colin Waite and Steven Stout, who are the original producers of the show. We did this 4.5-hour long play that was called Kapowie Go-Go at the People's Improv Theater, which was a lot of fun. That's a longer story.
I was gonna say, when I was doing my research, I stumbled upon that. Was it literally in one sitting?
Yeah. It was 9 episodes that were each about like 20 minutes long or so, but it was 4.5 hours long, and you know what? Great. Langston was in it.
Yes, it was. It's a blast.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But towards the end of that, we were just kind of like, well, what next? Because that one was very fun. It was a good show, but it was also very hard to get people to come and see a 4.5 hour.
I was gonna say it's a big ask of the audience.
It is, but gratifying for those who tried.
Titanic was 2 VHS tapes, and people complained about that. They loved that movie.
We
so like the 4-hour thing.
3 to 4 VHS tapes, which is great. But towards the end of that, we were just kind of thinking what would be next, and it was obviously we really wanted to do something that would be a little bit more accessible, certainly. And so I was sitting on a subway going to a friend's holiday party. I do not remember which holiday. I thought it was Christmas, but I think it was August. So whatever holiday is in August, I do not know. But the idea kind of came about where it was
Flag Day, Earth. No.
I think it was a good old Flag Day party. But no, the thought just kind of...
Flag Day Rager. Classic Flag Day Rager. Yeah.
Oh, such a rager. But the thought just kind of entered my head that it would be a funny story to like look at the perspective of a particular Wizard book series from the perspective of the other kids at the school, because the idea was just that, it would have been really horrifying to have been a student there for those 7 years because of how terrible everything continually kept getting. It got worse and worse every year. And then it was like a quick jump to be like, we should focus it on the Puff House. Woo indeed. Right. Just because of like pop culture, at least for recently, this has not been the case, but for a long time, they were sort of considered the not so cool kids of Wizard School. And I thought that would be very relatable to lots of people. And so that it kind of built from there. And then we tried to go about, making it be full of jokes from the series, but also just full of jokes that anybody would get, and then really just trying to play in the heart.
Well, it's funny. I think you guys really succeed in that, and a lot of it feels, too, like a lot of conversations. I think anyone who's a fan of that particular series... By the way, referring to it as that particular series, does that extend to this conversation as well? Do we...
Probably.
Got it. So then for the sake...
For 2 years, I've stuck with never saying a certain... the he who we shall not name.
Yeah, got it. Fantastic. So then we'll stick to it. But anyway, it feels like a lot of conversations that as like friends and fans you've probably had before, and you've sort of extrapolated that, brought them to life in a lot of ways. I want to go down the line, guys. Tell me a little bit about how you got involved with the show and how you've sort of fleshed out your character and developed it into this like living, breathing, actual part of this universe. We'll start. You start.
Sure,
why not?
Mic,
Yeah.
I'll look at you first.
Fine. No, I've known Matt since we did stuff at the Flea Theater down in Tribeca. And so he had the idea for the show, and he was like, hey, I want you to play this part. And I was like, okay, cool. So that's sort of where it started, was he was like, you're going to be, sort of the kid who wants to be a hero. And I was like, all right. No, but it's been a long journey of figuring out what that's like and what it's like to, as a person, want to, strive to be something really special, and maybe that's not in the cards in the same way that we see it in the series, in the way that, he becomes, the chosen one. There can only be one of those. So what it's like to want to be that and fall short, and sort of, I think that's a thing that a lot of us struggle with as we grow up, and being like, how do you go through life knowing that you're not going to be the most famous person on earth and still, have a happy and fulfilling life in that way. So
our little funny play gets very deep.
Yeah, no, you're like taken, like you're not blindsided, but you don't see it coming. You're like, oh wow, this is. I'm feeling things.
That's good. That's great. Yeah.
Joke's on you.
Julianne?
Yeah, I'm also friends with Mr. Matt Cox over here doing stuff at the Flea Theater with Zac. And I saw Kapowie Go-Go, and I loved it. And I would think, while watching it, like, oh my God, I hope Matt asks me to be in something. I hope he asks me to be in something. So he wrote Puffs, and we did a reading of it at the Pit. And he wasn't even like, I want you to play this part. He's like, hey, can you do this reading? Like, play this part of Megan. And so, we did the reading. He was like, all right, the part story is from here on out. I was like, oh my goodness. So yeah, I've been working on Megan's been fun because I was not like Megan at all growing up in high school. I was a goody two-shoes, not rebellious. My mom's in the audience. She can attest to that. She's like a little bit of a goth chick, rebellious. And so I guess working on her, I think in a similar way to Wayne, she also wants to be special. She wants to know who she is, like, right away. And so she kind of keeps on pinning herself into these things. And wanting to be special, that's something I can relate to. And that's what I always kind of go from that area for myself.
Langston, since they both mentioned being friends with Matt, I imagine you guys are mortal enemies.
I'll tell you the honest truth.
Each other.
Can't stand him. I was also friends with Matt. I met Matt at the People's Improv Theater because when they were doing Kapowie Go-Go, this is so ridiculous. They were doing Kapowie Go-Go, and it's such an amazing show, and they wanted to use it as like, hey, we want to attach things at the Pit to the show because it's so amazing. It has so many awesome people coming to see it. And a group that I am in with Nick Correa, who's also in Puffs, Gus, we did a show with one of the hours of Kapowie Go-Go, and then I was fortunate and honored to end up being in Kapowie Go-Go, which was awesome, and also harrowing, but oh boy, but it was so rewarding. And then eventually I was like, hey, I want you to do the reading of this show, and I was like, absolutely, because I trust him implicitly. So and he gave me this awesome, fun character to mess around with and play with. And Oliver, I think the interesting thing, the juxtaposition between these two is that Oliver's already special in the mug world. He's already a genius. So I think it's interesting seeing his arc of going from realizing that, yeah, you are special in certain places. You go some places and it's a complete, cold water in the face type thing of like, oh no, I don't know what's going on. And then I think the really fun thing is playing the arc of watching him and experiencing him finding his place in this school of things that make no sense because he's like us. He's like people that, it's like he's from New Jersey. He's a person. He's like a normal person.
Really good at math.
He's really good at math, and he's like something that I objectively hated in school. So I was like, oh, Matt, yikes.
Acting.
Truly is.
Yeah, and actually, so what's funny is that, the show, they've mentioned the reading, so pretty much every single person in the show was in the first reading of the play at the Pit, all three of them, and we added Nick Carrillo for the second reading, and then we've only swapped one actor out throughout the history of the show over the 2 years, which is crazy. But yeah, even then, so it's like Wayne and Megan have changed a lot working with them. But Oliver, actually, since the first reading, we nailed it. It was like, oh, this is funny.
Right
Person who's really good at math, not good at being a wizard.
This is it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, it's pretty much. It's one of those things like, yep, and it's so simple. It's just like, yeah, he's not good. He really wants to try to be good. But he keeps being put in mortal danger, and that gets in the way of that. Yeah.
Well, it's those little details and those little character nuances that really end up tricking you into connecting to these people. And I'm wondering, how much of that did you have laid out and then you folded in the jokes, or was it a little more organic where you're making the references at the same time? Oh, this is a great time to reference this part of this movie, and so on and so forth.
It was a mixture of both, really. It was we really sort of set out these three when we were working on the plot of the thing, which it's been changing ever since we first did it. Because luckily we did it at the People's Improv Theater at first. We were kind of able to make it be a different show every single night. But no, we really looked at these three and wanted to make sure that their character arcs really felt complete. And so we've been working on that a while. But then any time, I had a very long list of things specifically from the books and the movies that I wanted to make sure that we hit these. And then was figuring out how to meld those together. And luckily, it tended to work out pretty well. Of just there are certain moments in Harry's life, we were able to go, oh yeah, this will line up really well with Oliver being really bad at magic and things like that. And them being in the background of certain moments is very fun.
I gotta know, when did you make the decision to portray Ron in the way that you choose?
The train ride after the Flag Day party was one of the first thoughts. It was like, oh, it'd be funny to do a play from the other perspective of the other kids. Oh, and Ron should be played by a mop.
Yeah, it's literally.
It was the second, and in that reading, Ron was even played by a broomstick.
Yeah,
actually,
we had a broom
because
even
that's
at
what
that first reading.
And it's one of those things that just sounds so silly on the page, but when you see it, like, you guys play it up like to the best possible way, and it's hilarious.
I think it really encapsulates like the show, and what we think is sort of special about it is that we do treat the mop like it's a person as well.
I talk to the mop.
Yeah, we try to inject a lot of humanity into it.
Yeah, the mop's a real diva. You know, it's like really hard to work with.
I want to ask you. So obviously, the show's been in a couple of different places now. You're at the new stage, the new stages, and you know, you were at the Pit for a while. You all have experience at the Pit, and the show kind of was really made at the Pit in a lot of ways. Is there a lot of room baked into the show for that, like, little wiggle room of the improv and stuff like that? And how do you guys play with that at this point?
Yeah, so there is a lot, and I've let it actually grow a little bit more for this run because it's also, and these people have been playing these parts now for almost 2 years, and so it's like, it's very, I believe that their instincts are now correct. But there are even some specific moments where it's just kind of like, say whatever you want here, I don't really care. Like, there's a solid Nick Rio, who was another improviser. He has a moment where it can be 1 to 5 minutes long sometimes, where it's the Zac Smith part of the show.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, no. Which can sometimes get very grotesque and adult, and sometimes it's just, I'm just kind of sitting backstage and going, oh,
yeah,
weird.
Is your family-friendly show, which I was reading about, by the way, is that just basically you tell him to tone it down a notch?
Yeah, that's one of it. Yeah, so we're starting these family-friendly matinees for the weekend performances, and it's really just taking the language out of the show. It's like, if anything was appropriate from the movies, it's the same. Ideally, I assume the children have seen those if they want to see the show. But yeah, it's mostly just being like, hey, don't say those things.
Maybe don't mime that with the broomstick.
Yes, yeah, a lot of that. But yeah, and then there's a lot of, like, Langston has a few little moments where it's like, he's welcome to do whatever he wants. Steve Stout, who is the artistic director of the Pit, he has a few moments as well where he's kind of, it's built in there. And it's like, I very much think that the show wants to live as like a free, playful thing in certain spaces. So I like whenever, and anyone can kind of change things up whenever they want to try it, but not too much if people are watching.
Well, it's impressive that you've factored in that space because the show runs about 90 minutes, but you cover so much ground. You're covering the 7 years, as it were, 7 books or 7 films, and so that you even are still able to fold in that time to stretch or shrink and grow as appropriate is pretty amazing. Did that take time to perfect? Were there versions of the show where you guys rehearsed and you were like, okay, that was 3 hours, we had fun, but now we gotta make a show out of this?
Yeah.
Like,
the first time I did a big update of the script, we actually did it at the University of Florida as like a little trial performance there. With some of the newer things when we were moving the show to the Electra Theater, which is where it was before New World Stages. And that first reading of that was like 2 hours and 20 minutes long. It was like, okay, well, a little too much.
I want to talk to you guys a little bit because going back to the whole 7 years thing, and I don't know if it was just me, but like I definitely like perceived a different touch to your performance versus your first year and your final year. Like not just the arc, but also maybe like in the pitch of your voice and the way you carried yourself and your posture. If you could talk about sort of finding a way to compress 7 years of an individual's growth into 90 minutes and how you guys sort of figured that out and what you're kind of tapping into for that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something Kristen talked to us about from day one, is making sure that we could really track that change because we are covering so much ground in so little time, and it's a lot of it's written in too, because like what is your perspective on life when you're 11 versus when you're 16 and you're the whole year when sex becomes a thing, and people start discovering that
You're 6.
You're 6. That sort of thing definitely changes how you approach the material, and like in little stuff, remembering how we've all been through it, remembering how your body changed in that way, even from pitch of your voice, from posture, from discovering how to move in space in a different way. And so I think that was something that we were pretty conscious of from the beginning. So hopefully, I'm glad that that's reading in some way. That's awesome.
Because sometimes you're doing it and you're like, no one believes I'm 11 years old. And it's like,
at the moment I walk out on stage, and this 11-year-old boy, and someone in the audience will go, ha!
Also a very unique thought to have as nobody believes I'm an 11-year-old boy.
It's tough, yeah.
That's a weird place as an actor to have to put yourself.
Yeah, I think it's really fun to compartmentalize it in every year. It's like, what would be the thing that you're obsessed with at this point in your life. Like, there's a point in the show where Oliver has a line at the beginning of year 3 that I was like, oh yeah, this is when he discovered like Hardy Boys books or like detective books, because this is what he's obsessed with now, figuring out things. And another year he's obsessed with finding friends. Or and there's another year where like, I think that's one thing that really helped me. Going like every year in school, there was one thing that you came into the new day of school and be like, I got my Spider-Man backpack. Check it out, everybody.
This is me now.
Yeah,
like,
it's like this defines who I am.
Exactly.
If you don't like Spider-Man, I don't want to be friends with you anymore.
My shoes light up when I walk.
Exactly.
Like, that's the kind of guy I am now. I want to.
Remember when they rolled?
Was that actually that dovetails into one of the other questions I had? Was I picked out at one scene you just inexplicably had a pocket protector? Was that something that you like decided to just? Like,
no, it wasn't me. That was I always have it, and it's.
Oh, really?
Yeah, our amazing,
yeah.
amazing, brilliant, awesome costume designer Madeline Bundy. She came up with all these amazingly small touches that I'm also glad are like, it's like some people are like, oh, he has a pocket protector, and like, but the other characters, like all the shirts and the awesome.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to ask
for.
more specifically about that, right? Like, in addition to all the references to He Who Shall Not Be Named, there's tons of 90s references and pop culture references that you guys fold in, which I, admittedly, as like a movie fan, I would say my wife's the book fan, I'm the movie guy, I forgot that those things took place in the 90s. So at first I was like, didn't these come out in like the early 2000s? Like, I was totally like time warped. But anyway, to that end, yes, the shirts that like Julianne that you have, and like your like Master of the Universe shirts, like, did you guys fold that in? Was that on the page, or did you get to like pull from your like childhood and your favorite things when you were little?
Yeah, so that was also, the shirts were another Madeline Bundy, who designed pretty much like everything in the show.
Yeah, and Maddie also plays Harry Potter. Whoa!
Pot.
No. Harry Potter.
All right, I'm gonna stop talking now.
But
I had one job.
Oh no. Well, it's been fun.
The lights just go off. There's just
But no, that was actually, it was a specific
right?
thing that we talked about throughout it. It's a lot of the stuff, pretty much all the references throughout the 90s, because the books do take place in the 90s, which I think is so funny, because what a weird time of pop culture when we look back, the 90s were. But a lot of the little references in it are just the things that I remember going, I really liked those when I was a kid, so I'm going to put them in. Like, I was trying to get a Biker Mice from Mars t-shirt in.
What?
But that didn't happen, but that's fine. That was something I was like, oh yeah, that was a thing. But it's a lot of little like Master of the Universe, and she brought in all the new shirts this time, which I love so much, like an X-Men.
Which also
shirt.
all relate to the year that we're in.
Yeah, it's wonderfully thought through. And it's also, even with the costumes, one of the most amazing things was that everything is supposed to be cosplayable is the idea. And we have had people show up to the show dressed up as the characters, which is really amazing.
Cool. What's that like to be a part? So you start off in this show where I imagine you're having fun. This is a fun thing. You have no idea legally how this is all going to play out, you know? So you're just having a great time. Now it's blown up. You're freaking out if you accidentally say HP together, and you have people dressing up as your characters and coming to see you. What's it like at that point now to kind of takes like stock of where you are?
I mean, it leaves me speechless sometimes. It's kind of unreal. Like, I don't think any of us imagined that this is where we'd be sitting, 2 years ago even. We even had a nice young lady who's seen the show 5 times and, like, baked us cookies and brought them to the show last week, which was unbelievably kind. And, like, and just, like, seeing the way that this show can touch people in a way that really seems to resonate is, like, the coolest thing. Because it really means that, like, Matt and all of us have done our job in a way that, like, this is actually speaking to someone. And so if that can be true, then, like, great. We've done our job, and that's amazing. So as long as we're there, then that's so cool.
Yeah, way early on at the Electra, we had an 11-year-old girl come to the show, and she had a great time. And sure enough, the mom sent us pictures of her cosplaying as Megan. For Halloween. And she did fan art and everything. I mean, it was that kind of thing where, like, I could play Hamlet one day, but no one really comes dressing up as Hamlet.
Yeah, take that, Hamlet.
You never know. Well,
There's one person dressed as Hamlet watching at home right now going, oh.
That's definitely what's happening.
I worked so hard on it.
Honestly, person dressed as Hamlet, the show is probably for you.
Well, I'm going to turn it over to audience Q&A, but of course, wouldn't be doing my job. Guys, opening night is Monday, July 17th, right?
Yes.
New World Stages. Tickets are available on telecharge.com. Guys, rather you're an HP fan or not, actually, can I even say HP? I don't even know.
It could mean anything.
If you dig printers, and monitors. Go
Look,
see
bottom
love
line, this
printers.
show's good. I'm being dead honest. It's really funny. It's a great ride. Go check it out. Get yourself some tickets. We're gonna open it up for audience Q&A. We have some mics in the room. First one's right here.
Hey guys, so I was just wondering if with you guys having knowledge of the books, like how much input did you guys have with your characters, and then also would you be up to like revisiting these characters also, like maybe like on a follow-up as well?
Well,
yes.
to answer the second part of that, there is actually, and we're hopefully going to do the readings of these. There are 2 Puffs other plays. There is a sequel already that sort of plays with a certain other play that is coming here, that it's in London right now, that is called 19 Years Later, which visits the characters during the events of that play. And
What's
then we
the
also
full title,
have
Matt? What's the full title?
19 Years Later, or There and Back Again, A Puff's Tale. Parts 1 and 3. And then there is a film script reading that we do, which is a prequel that's not really a prequel. It's called Dude, Where's My Fantastic Beast? Or 22 short films about magical New York City and the time a Puff came for a quick visit and the disaster that followed.
Your graphic designer hates you, right?
I actually was the one who did those, so I only hate myself. But so that is something that we've definitely looked at, and it's actually a lot of fun writing these characters as if they were adults, because they're very malleable. They fit into several different circumstances, which is a lot of fun because they're just kind of they're like an everyman sort of group of people, which is good with underdog stories. But
Yeah. But back to the first part of the question, like when we were rehearsing and stuff and actually like having input, like I remember during rehearsal we would all come in and be like, but what if we got to do something about this part of the book or this part of the movie, or like what if we threw this idea out? Like it was great, like, you know, and Matt was very gracious in listening to us and then ignoring us when need be. But and finding, and in the end finding the best ideas, but like it was fun to have so much source material to pull from, and for so many of us to be well versed in it, to like be able to throw out ideas and like look at it from different perspectives and go from there. So that was really fun.
Very cool. Thanks. Next question is right there.
Hi, I was wondering if you guys personally identify as a Puff, or is there another house that you feel you fit into?
I do definitely personally identify as a Puff, and also the internet confirmed it, so that was good, which is very good for interviews. It's always it's a satisfying answer.
Fact check yourself.
Yeah,
Just make
exactly.
sure,
I'm like, all right, yeah, no, I get it. And especially the more I read the books, I was like, oh yeah, these people are great.
Langston?
I do identify with the Puffs. I was told also by the internet that first I was a snake, which is
what we call
one of the houses, and then I was a brave, which is one of the other ones. So I don't know. I got a lot of information. I don't want but I do. Yeah, I do identify as a Puff. I do.
I'm usually placed in a brave. Yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, I identified as a Puff. Although the internet told me I was a brave, and I was like, I don't know about that. Anyone that knows me would disagree, I think, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty clumsy, as noted, as seen.
Do you guys find yourself in conversation with your friends outside of a context where there's any legal action that could possibly be taken, and you're still using the code words?
Yep.
Yes,
and they're like,
100%.
what the hell are you talking about?
You never know
What book
who's
did you
watching.
read? Like,
100%.
They're everywhere. There's eyes and ears everywhere.
Yeah, no, I've definitely hit the point where it's like, we have our own lingo, and we kind of keep to that.
fair enough. I think we have time for one more question, and it's coming from, right there you are.
Hello. I wanted to know, what was your favorite element in the HP universe?
My favorite thing, and it's something that I was lucky enough to get to play with the show, and it's been very influential to me as like a writer even. I just love the way that they grew up, like the books, how they aged along with Harry. And I was of that lucky age where I was like the same age every time the books came out. And so it was amazing that they stayed relevant to my life's interest and like what was going on. Like his problems were similar things, and I just loved like how it got darker and darker as it kept going. And so that's something we play with the show as well, which is a lot of fun. But that's something, I don't know, I just love things that grow over time. I think it's very interesting.
I love because it plays into Oliver's character, I love the idea that you could be hanging out on a day such as today, and then all of a sudden someone's like, pack up your stuff. You're going to be a wizard. And it's like, but, and it's like, because Oliver, he was going to go to Oxford. He was going to have this life. And it's like, not anymore. You do magic now. Also, magic, real. Like, we have a moment of that in the show where he finds out that it's like, also, oh, that's right, wizards are a real thing. And you're going to be one of them. Oh, man, you got to go to London. Oh, yeah, well, fine. And I love the idea that this is happening elsewhere, and then they just go, that one, yeah, cool, come on, and that's such an interesting like dichotomy between those two worlds of understanding.
I mean, I loved the female characters in the book. They're strong, they're smart. The boys would be nothing without them, and I loved that. In terms of a hero tale, especially, that's something I really loved about the books.
The first thing that's coming to mind, I love the tournament in year 4. I love the idea of like starting to expand the world and see like the whole world of wizards, and then like them coming together for this tournament where people died in the past, and it was so dangerous that they had to stop doing it, and then they went, let's bring it back. We're sure we can do it, and everyone will be fine. So that was something I always like really enjoyed. I was like, oh, we're finally expanding this world, and you can see sort of the whole thing in terms, and not just like the sector focused on England. And
you guys do some brilliant stuff with the tournament and the show, by the way.
Had some fun with it, thank you.
Some real fun with it. I won't spoil anything. Honestly, guys, you should go check it out. As I was saying earlier, it's at the New World Stages, Puffs, and I'm going to have to read the rest of this, okay?
Fine.
7 increasingly eventful years at a certain school of magic and magic. Guys, it's worth every penny. Go check it out, telecharge.com. Join me one more time in thanking Matt, Langston, Julianne, Zach. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.